Do you believe that some graves keep more than memories? That some truths wait patiently in silence, hidden among the tombstones, until the right person comes along to uncover them? For most people, a cemetery is a place of endings. But for Miguel Santiago, this visit to Jaro Cemetery in Iloilo City was about to be the beginning of something that would change his life forever. It had been 3 years since his sister Elena passed away in a car accident that shattered their family. Since that day, Miguel kept a monthly ritual: bring flowers, stand in silence, and leave without saying a word. The cemetery had become his place of quiet punishment, a reminder of the calls he didn't return, the dinners he missed, the words left unsaid. That grey morning, Miguel walked through the iron gates, the heavy air damp with the smell of rain and earth. The century-old trees leaned over the paths like watchful guardians, their shadows falling across the graves. His polished shoes crunched against the gravel as he approached Elena's white stone tomb, preparing to repeat the same routine. But today, something was different. From a distance, he saw a small figure huddled at the base of the grave. A boy, barefoot, thin, his knees pulled to his chest, sat pressed against the headstone. Miguel stopped, his heart slamming against his ribs. In the boy's hands was a worn photograph, its edges frayed with time. And when Miguel looked closer, his breath caught. It was a picture of Elena, smiling, kneeling on the grass with her arms wrapped around this very child. Miguel's mind went blank. How could this boy be here with this photo? Elena never told him about visiting any orphanages or caring for a child. He took a step closer, and the sound of his shoe crunching the gravel made the boy look up. Their eyes met, and in that instant, Miguel felt the world shift beneath him. He knelt down slowly, trying not to scare the boy. "Who are you?" Miguel asked gently. The boy hesitated before whispering, "Andres." Miguel swallowed hard. "And why are you here?" "She told me to come," Andres said softly, nodding toward Elena's name carved on the tombstone. Miguel's chest tightened. "She told you." The words rang in his ears. Elena had been gone for 3 years. How could this boy claim she told him to come? And then Andres said something that made Miguel's blood run cold, something that would send him on a journey he never expected. "And you won't believe what happens next. Stay with me, because this is just the beginning of a story that will challenge everything you think you know about love, family, and second chances." If you enjoy deep, emotional stories like this, don't forget to subscribe to the channel right now so you don't miss what comes next. Miguel kept his voice steady, though his hands trembled. "She told you to come. When?" Andres's eyes lowered to the photograph. "Before she left. She used to visit me at San Lorenzo Children's Home. She said this place would always feel warm, because she was here." The way he said it, simple, unquestioning, sliced through Miguel's defenses. Elena visiting an orphanage? Planning anything without telling him? It didn't fit the version of her he had carefully kept in his memory, frozen and uncomplicated. He reached for the photo. The boy hesitated, then loosened his grip. Elena's smile stared back at him, not the polite one she wore at family gatherings, but an easy, unguarded smile. Her hand rested on Andres's shoulder like it belonged there. Miguel felt the ground tilt. What else had he missed while living 2 cities away, answering emails at midnight, promising he'd call tomorrow? A breeze swept the path. The trees whispered above them. Miguel pulled off his jacket and draped it over Andres's narrow shoulders. "You can't stay here," he said softly. "Come with me. We'll figure this out together." The boy nodded once, as if agreeing not to hope too much. In the car, silence gathered between them like fog over the river. Andres pressed his forehead to the glass, following the grey line of the sky. Miguel kept stealing glances in the rearview mirror, unsure which unsettled him more, the boy's quiet or the certainty that Elena had been walking into an entirely different life while he wasn't looking. He drove past the Iloilo River Esplanade, then turned toward a small business hotel. He wasn't ready to take the boy home. The house still felt like a shrine. In the room, Andrés sat on the edge of the armchair, feet tucked under him, hands folded around the photograph, as if it were permission to exist. He didn't ask for food, didn't ask where he would sleep. He seemed practiced in taking up as little space as possible. Miguel paced, the carpet swallowing his steps. "Tomorrow," he said at last, "we'll go to San Lorenzo. I want to know why my sister never told me about you." The boy only nodded, eyes fixed on the picture. Miguel turned off the lamp. In the dark, his phone lit with an old text from Elena he'd never answered. "Can we talk this weekend? It's important." He closed his eyes against the ache. Whatever she'd wanted to say was waiting for him. Now, in a small voice, a frayed photograph, and a truth that refused to stay buried. "And you have no idea what will happen when Miguel knocks on the orphanage door, because someone is already waiting for him inside with answers that will change everything. And you have no idea what will happen when Miguel knocks on the orphanage. Because someone is already waiting for him inside with answers that will change everything." The rusty gates of San Lorenzo Children's Home creaked as Miguel pushed them open. Andrés walked beside him, head lowered, still clutching the photograph as though it were his shield. The building was small, its paint peeling, the garden overgrown, but there was an air of quiet discipline about the place. At the entrance, a nun with kind, tired eyes appeared. When she saw Andrés, she pressed her hand to her chest. "Thank heavens," she whispered, kneeling to hold his shoulders. "Where have you been, child?" Andrés said nothing, simply glanced at Miguel as if passing the responsibility of answering to him. "I'm Miguel Santiago," he said firmly. "I'd like to speak to whoever is in charge." They were led through a narrow hallway that smelled of old books and floor polish until they reached a small office. Behind a wooden desk sat Sister Teresa, her hair silver and pulled into a neat bun. She didn't smile. "I knew this day would come," she said softly. Miguel frowned. "What do you mean?" "Your sister," Sister Teresa said, folding her hands on the desk. "Elena was here every other weekend. She read to the children, brought them food, but above all, she spent time with Andrés." Miguel's throat tightened. "Why him? Why not anyone else?" The nun's voice softened. "Because she loved him, because she was preparing to adopt him." The words hit Miguel like a thunderclap. He sat back, staring at Andrés, who stood silently by the door, his small figure framed by the light from the corridor. Adopt him. Elena wanted to make this boy part of their family, and she never told him. "Perhaps she tried," Sister Teresa said gently, as if reading his thoughts. "Perhaps you weren't ready to hear her then." Miguel swallowed hard, anger and regret mixing inside him like a storm. "Why didn't she tell me?" "Sometimes," the nun replied, "people keep their dreams quiet because they are afraid of being told they are impossible." Miguel stood, unable to remain still. He looked at Andrés, at the photograph still, gripped in his hands, and felt the first crack in the walls he had built around his grief. This was no longer just about visiting a grave. This was about finishing something Elena had started, and what Miguel decides to do next will test his courage, his heart, and everything he thought he knew about responsibility. Stay with me, because the next part of this story will leave you breathless. And if you haven't done so yet, subscribe to the channel so you don't miss the moment Miguel makes his choice. Miguel drove in silence. the road stretching along the Iloilo River, bathed in the orange light of the late afternoon. Andres sat in the passenger seat this time, smaller than ever, hugging his knees and staring at the photograph as if it were the last piece of Elena he had. Every turn of the wheel felt heavy. Miguel had never been responsible for anyone but himself. His life had been neat, organized, work in Makati, visits to Iloilo once a month, flowers at the cemetery, back to the city. Now there was a child in his car, and the weight of that child felt like both a burden and a calling. He stopped in front of a small hotel near the Esplanade. He wasn't ready to take Andres to his family house yet. The house still smelled of Elena's perfume, still felt like a room he wasn't ready to open. Inside the hotel room, Andres sat, on the edge of the bed, hands clasped, feet dangling above the floor. He didn't speak, didn't ask for dinner, didn't ask where the bathroom was. He just sat there waiting, as if his whole life had taught him not to take up too much space. Miguel sat on the chair across from him, loosening his tie. "I don't know what to do with you," he admitted quietly, half to himself. Andres finally looked up, and there was no judgment in his gaze, just a quiet kind of understanding that hurt more than anger ever could. Miguel turned off the lights, leaving only the glow from the city filtering through the curtains. As he lay awake, he kept hearing Sister Teresa's words. She was preparing to adopt him. Could he do what Elena wanted? Could he step into a life he never asked for? Miguel closed his eyes, but no sleep came. He could feel the next decision pulling at him, an invisible thread tying him to this boy and to a choice that could not be undone. And you won't believe what Miguel does the next morning, because when he returns to the orphanage, he learns something that changes his decision forever. The next morning, Miguel parked once again in front of the San Lorenzo Children's Home. The sun had barely risen, and the garden was still damp with dew. Andres walked beside him, silent but obedient, holding the photograph like a passport to a life he wasn't sure he belonged to. Sister Teresa welcomed them into her office, her face calm, as though she had been expecting Miguel's return. She opened a small metal filing cabinet and laid a folder on the desk. "These are the documents your sister left with us," she said. Miguel sat down slowly, his heart hammering. Inside the folder were adoption forms partially filled out, receipts of donations, and even a letter in Elena's handwriting. He unfolded the letter with careful fingers. "Miguel," it began, "if you are reading this, I hope you will understand why I did what I did. Andres reminded me that love is not limited by blood. I wanted to give him a chance to belong somewhere. If I never got to tell you this, please don't be angry. Just take care of him the way I would have." Miguel closed his eyes, the paper trembling in his hands. He felt a sting behind his eyelids, but forced it back. "She never told me," he whispered. Sister Teresa placed a hand over his. "She tried many times. She said you were too busy in Manila, that you always said you would talk later." The guilt landed heavy in his chest. He had been busy. He had been distracted. And now he was the only one left who could finish what she started. But just as Miguel was starting to feel the weight of a new responsibility settle over him, Sister Teresa spoke again. "There is something else you should know. Another family, the Salazars, have already expressed interest in adopting Andres. They are good people, financially secure. They could take him in as early as next week." Miguel froze. Another family. Someone else ready to take Andres away, to erase this fragile connection before it even had a chance to grow. Andres stood very still, eyes fixed on the floor, as if bracing for the decision. Miguel's grip tightened on the letter. He didn't know if he was ready to be anyone's guardian, but the idea of leaving Andres behind now felt unbearable. He rose to his feet. "Pack his things," he said finally. "He's coming with me." Andres's eyes widened, not with excitement, but with quiet disbelief. "And What happens when Miguel brings Andres into his own home will push him to confront the grief he has been avoiding for years, and it might break him before it heals. Miguel hesitated for a long moment outside the front door of his family home. The house stood quiet, as if holding its breath, its windows reflecting the pale morning light. For 3 years, this house had been a shrine to Elena, her photos on the mantel, her favorite scarf still hanging on the coat rack. Her room kept exactly as she left it. He unlocked the door and stepped inside, the echo of their footsteps sounding louder than usual. Andres froze in the doorway, his small frame tense, clutching his small bag to his chest. He looked like someone standing at the edge of forbidden ground. "You can come in," Miguel said softly. Andres stepped over the threshold with hesitant, almost reverent steps. His bare feet touched the cold tiles of the foyer, and his eyes darted around, scanning every corner as though committing it all to memory. Miguel led him to the guest room, a pristine space with neatly folded linen and untouched furniture. "This will be your room," he said, forcing his voice to sound neutral. "Bathroom is there. If you need anything." He trailed off, unsure how to finish. Andres sat on the edge of the bed, still holding the photograph. He didn't lie down, didn't remove his shoes, just sat hunched, as if waiting for instructions. That night, Miguel couldn't sleep. He sat in the dim light of his study, a glass of whiskey untouched on the desk. The house felt different now, less like a mausoleum and more like something alive, something waiting. On the desk lay Elena's letter. He read it again and again, hearing her voice between the lines. Guilt coiled in his chest. For the first time in 3 years, Miguel cried, quietly. The kind of cry that doesn't ask for witnesses. In the hallway, he caught a glimpse of Andres standing near Elena's room, staring at the closed door. Miguel walked over and gently guided him away. "Not tonight," he said. The boy nodded silently, and you won't believe what Miguel finds the next morning when he opens Elena's room. Because inside, there is one last message from her that will shake him to his core. The next morning, Miguel stood outside Elena's bedroom door, his hand on the knob, frozen. For 3 years, he had kept this door shut, afraid that opening it would make the loss real all over again. But now, with Andres in the house, he felt as though Elena herself was asking him to face what he had been running from. He turned the knob slowly and pushed the door open. The faint scent of her lavender perfume still lingered, mixed with the dusty air of a room untouched for years. Her books were stacked neatly on the shelves, her scarf still hanging from the back of the chair. Miguel sat on the bed, letting the weight of memory wash over him. Then he saw it, a small wooden box on the dresser. Inside were letters, photographs, and a small USB drive with Elena's name written in her handwriting. His heart pounded as he carried it to his study and plugged it into his laptop. A single video file appeared. When he pressed play, Elena's face filled the screen. Her hair was down, and the late afternoon light behind her made her look almost alive. "Miguel," she began softly, "if you're watching this, it means I never got the chance to tell you in person. Andres is special. He needed someone, and so did I. I know you were busy, always chasing deadlines and promotions, but I hoped that one day you'd see what I see in him. I wanted to bring him home, to give him a place to belong." Miguel's throat tightened as he leaned closer to the screen. "If you can," she continued, her eyes wet with unshed tears, "finish what I started. Don't let him spend another birthday waiting for someone who never comes. He deserves to be chosen. And maybe, brother, so do you." The screen went black. Miguel sat there motionless until he heard a soft sound at the door. Andres was standing there, his small figure framed by the hallway light. "You were talking to her," he said quietly. Miguel nodded. "Yes, she left me this message." Andres stepped inside, hesitant. "What did she say?" Miguel swallowed hard. She asked me to take care of you for the first time. A spark lit in Andres's dark eyes, a mix of fear, hope, and something fragile that might one day become trust. Miguel rested his forehead against his hands. "I don't know if I can do this, Elena," he whispered, though the room was empty now. "And you won't believe what Andres says next, because his words will break the last piece of Miguel's armor and force him to face the choice he's been avoiding." Miguel closed the laptop, the black screen reflecting his weary face. Elena's words echoed in his mind like church bells. "Finish what I started." But doubts gnawed at him. He wasn't Elena. He wasn't nurturing, patient, or gentle. He had spent years drowning himself in work to avoid feelings. Could he suddenly become what this boy needed? That evening he tried to establish rules. It was easier to cling to order than to face the chaos in his chest. "You'll sleep at 9, he said firmly. "No wandering around the house. Tomorrow we'll set up a routine: breakfast, school, study, sleep." Andres stared at him, expression blank. "Do you understand?" Miguel pressed. "Yes," the boy answered softly, eyes fixed on the floor. Hours later, when Miguel walked down the hallway, he noticed light seeping under the guest room door. He pushed it open. Andres was still awake, curled on the bed, the photograph clutched to his chest, the lamp burning beside him. "I told you to sleep," Miguel said, sharper than he intended. Andres's lips trembled, but instead of obedience, words burst out. "You're not my father. You don't even want me here. You just brought me because you felt guilty." The sentence landed like a slap. Miguel froze, his jaw tightening. He recognized that tone, angry, defensive, aching. It was his own voice from years ago, the way he used to lash out at Elena whenever she pushed him to open up. Miguel exhaled sharply. "I'm trying," he said, but the words sounded hollow even to him. Andres turned his face away, burying it in the pillow. "Then stop pretending. If you're going to send me away, just do it now." Miguel's chest tightened. He wanted to shout back, to defend himself, but instead he walked out, slamming the door harder than he meant to. Later that night, unable to sleep, he grabbed his keys and drove. The road to Jaro Cemetery was empty, the air heavy with the smell of wet earth. He walked straight to Elena's grave, fell to his knees, and pressed his palm against the cold marble. "Why didn't you tell me?" he whispered. "Why didn't you force me to listen?" His voice cracked. "You trusted me with him, and I don't even know how to speak to him without making things worse." Tears blurred his vision. He hadn't cried like this in years, not even at her funeral. The weight of guilt pressed down on him until he felt small, broken, unworthy. Back at the house, near dawn, Miguel pushed the door open quietly. He expected Andres to be asleep, but instead found him sitting in the hallway, his knees tucked to his chest, head resting against the wall. Miguel crouched down. "Why are you here?" Andres looked up, his eyes red but dry. "I thought maybe you wouldn't come back." The boy's voice was steady, but the meaning cut deeper than any accusation. Miguel felt something collapse inside him. He reached out, hesitated, then placed a hand on the boy's shoulder. "I came back," he said hoarsely. "I'll always come back." For a moment Andres didn't move. Then slowly he leaned his small head against Miguel's arm, and what happens the next day will shake Miguel's resolve once again, because someone calls with news that threatens to take Andres away forever. The morning felt strangely calm. Sunlight spilled through the kitchen window as Andres sat quietly at the table, eating pan de sal and eggs Miguel had clumsily prepared. It should have been an ordinary moment, almost peaceful, but Miguel's phone began to ring, and with it the fragile calm shattered. "Mr. Santiago," said the voice on the other end. "This is Attorney Velasco. I wanted to inform you that the Salazar family is ready to move forward with Andres's adoption. They have the paperwork completed, and we can finalize the process by the end of the week. Miguel's hand tightened around the phone. His mouth went dry. I need time, he managed to say before hanging up. Andres had stopped eating, watching him with cautious eyes. Are they coming for me? He asked quietly. Miguel hesitated. They want you, yes. The boy looked down at his plate. They'll have a nice house, right? Maybe a garden, maybe even a dog? Yes, Miguel said, his voice barely above a whisper. Andres swallowed, then pushed his plate away. Then you should let them take me. They probably know how to be a family. The words hit Miguel like a punch to the chest. He wanted to protest, to shout that it wasn't that simple, but no words came. Instead, he stood abruptly and left the kitchen, needing air. That evening, Miguel found Andres sitting on the floor of the hallway, his small backpack packed beside him. Why are you packed? Miguel asked, his voice sharper than intended. Andres didn't look up. So it won't take long when they come. Miguel felt his anger rising, not at Andres, but at himself. At the universe. At Elena for leaving this responsibility in his hands. You think I'm just going to let them take you? Miguel said, his voice low. Andres finally looked at him, his dark eyes hard. Aren't you? You said you don't know if you can do this. Miguel clenched his jaw, his heart racing. He wanted to deny it, to say something reassuring, but honesty slipped out instead. I'm scared, Andres. I'm scared I'll fail you. The boy stood up, his small hands balled into fists. Then why bring me here at all? Miguel took a step closer. Because I couldn't leave you there. Because whether I like it or not, you are part of this family now. Andres's lip trembled, but he didn't cry. Then prove it. Don't send me away. Miguel froze. This was no longer just about finishing Elena's plan. This was about choosing to fight for the boy standing in front of him. He exhaled shakily, realizing what he had to do, and what Miguel does next will define not just Andres's future, but his own, because tomorrow he will make the most important decision of his life. The next morning, Miguel woke with a clarity he hadn't felt in years. The guilt, the fear, the doubts, they were all still there, but underneath them was something stronger, resolve. He walked to the guest room and found Andres sitting on the floor, knees pulled to his chest, as though he hadn't moved all night. Get dressed, Miguel said softly. Andres's brow furrowed. Why? Because today we're going to make this official. An hour later, they sat side by side in the Iloilo City Hall registry office. The room smelled of old paper and ink, and the fluorescent lights hummed faintly overhead. On the desk lay the documents, adoption papers, witness signatures, official stamps. Miguel's hand trembled as he picked up the pen. This is it, he said, glancing at Andres. Once I sign, you're not going anywhere. Not to the Salazars, not back to the orphanage. You'll stay here with me. Andres's lips parted in disbelief. You mean forever? Miguel nodded. Forever. When he signed the last line, something broke open inside him. A dam he hadn't realized was holding back years of grief, regret, and love. Andres reached out, small fingers gripping Miguel's sleeve, as though afraid he would change his mind. On the way home, Andres sat quietly in the car, but this time his posture was different. He leaned against the window, not in despair, but in relief. That night, Miguel found him in the living room, drawing with colored pencils he had bought earlier. What are you drawing? Miguel asked. Andres smiled shyly and turned the paper around. 3 figures stood hand in hand, a woman with long hair, a tall man, and a small boy. Beside them, a small dog wagged its tail. Miguel swallowed hard. Who's this? He asked, pointing at the man. That's you, Andres said simply. And maybe one day we can get a dog. Miguel laughed softly, the sound foreign but good. Maybe we can. The house felt different that night. No longer a shrine, no longer just a place of mourning. It felt like home. Elena was still gone, yes, but she was present in every corner, in the photographs on the wall, in the lavender scent that lingered in the sheets. And now, In the way Andres laughed softly at a silly TV show, Miguel stood in the doorway watching him and realized he was no longer just honoring Elena's memory. He was building something new, something living. If this story moved you, subscribe to the channel right now so you never miss another story like this. And if you've stayed with us until the end, leave a comment telling us where you're watching from. We love knowing how far these stories travel. Sometimes life doesn't restart with fireworks or applause. Sometimes it restarts quietly, with a signature on a piece of paper, with a smile that was once rare, with a boy who finally believes he belongs. And as Miguel turned off the lights and wished Andres good night, he knew that, for the first time in a very long time, he was exactly where he was supposed to be.